You are the master of your fate. Let's begin. I want you to take a moment and recall the last truly magnificent idea that seized your imagination, that vision of a future so vivid and compelling it felt more real than the room you were sitting in. You could see the finished work, the recognition on the faces of your peers, the profound sense of accomplishment that would finally, after all this time, be yours. And in that private theater of your mind, a deep and comforting certainty washed over you, a feeling that this was indeed your destiny, that it was only a matter of time before this beautiful fiction manifested itself as fact. My friend, I must tell you with the sober clarity of a man who has studied success and failure for a lifetime, that this feeling, this warm and seductive certainty, was the most dangerous part of the entire experience. You were, I am afraid to say, certain of the wrong thing. You became certain of the outcome, and in doing so, you unknowingly severed the vital connection between the dream and the labor required to bring it into the world. That intoxicating certainty robbed you of the essential creative tension, the divine dissatisfaction that forces a man or woman to rise from their chair and begin the work. Today, we are going to dissect this subtle and pervasive weakness of the modern mind, this tendency to confuse a vivid daydream with genuine progress. I will show you how this mental trickery keeps you passive, weak, and perpetually disappointed in yourself, and I will provide you with a simple but profound ritual, a method to transform those seductive visions from a pacifying narcotic into the very fuel that propels immediate and undeniable action. Let me draw back the curtain for you on a force so insidious, so cleverly disguised as inspiration, that it has derailed more potential than any overt failure ever could. We must give this enemy a name so we can recognize its face when it whispers to us. Call it passive certainty. This is not the genuine faith that moves mountains through sheer force of will and action. No, this is a hollow replica, a phantom feeling that mimics the satisfaction of achievement without any of the necessary struggle. It is the quiet thrill of visualizing the magnificent mansion without ever considering the weight of a single brick in your hand, the intoxicating daydream of a best-selling novel without the grueling discipline of facing a blank page each morning. Your mind, in its fascinating complexity, begins to accept the vividly imagined rehearsal as the actual performance, and in doing so, it commits the ultimate betrayal. It collects the reward for a race you have not yet run, leaving you without the motivation to even step up to the starting line. You have, perhaps without even realizing it, become a connoisseur of a future that does not exist, a historian of things that have never happened. And this addiction to the perfected image in your mind is the very chain that keeps you anchored in a harbor of your own making, watching as other, less gifted but more determined vessels sail past you toward horizons you only ever visit in your dreams. I recall a gentleman I once knew, a man of truly brilliant intellect and a captivating charm that could light up any room he entered. He possessed an imagination that could paint the most exquisite and detailed portraits of a future empire, a business venture so flawless in its conception that he could describe the grain of the mahogany desk in his corner office and the precise feeling of shaking hands with his first major investor. He would share these visions over dinner, his eyes alight with a fervor that was utterly convincing, and in the telling, he would experience the entire spectrum of emotions associated with monumental success: the pride, the validation, the profound relief of having finally arrived. He felt a powerful certainty, you see, a deep and abiding conviction that this was his inevitable destiny, yet this certainty was his prison. He was so utterly certain of the outcome, so comforted by the completed picture in his mind, that the actual work of building it felt mundane, even tedious by comparison. Why should he endure the frustrating awkwardness of making a cold call when he had already in his mind celebrated closing the deal? Why should he face the inevitable rejection and iteration required to build a prototype when he could already feel the smooth finish of the final product? His certainty was of the passive kind, and it functioned as the most effective sedative for his ambition, convincing him that the dream was enough and allowing him to live in a comfortable shack of potential rather than undertaking the messy, difficult, and glorious work of laying a single foundation stone for the castle he saw so clearly. His story is a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that a dream without immediate tangible action attached to it is not a plan for the future, it is a sanctuary from the present, a beautiful excuse for inaction that ultimately leaves you with nothing but the echo of what could have been. Now, to truly disarm this enemy of progress, you must understand the machinery of your own mind, the biological wiring that makes this trap of passive certainty so effortless to fall into and so difficult to escape. It is not a moral failing on your part, it is, rather, a fascinating and cruel trick of your own neurology. You see, when you engage in that vivid, detailed daydream of your success, your brain struggles to differentiate between that meticulously constructed fantasy and a real, lived experience. In both scenarios, it releases a powerful neurochemical called dopamine, which is the very currency of motivation, the sensation of reward and pleasure that nature designed to push us toward achieving our goals. This is the cruelest part of the entire affair. By indulging in the daydream, you are essentially tricking your brain into paying out the reward for an achievement that has not yet occurred. You are a counterfeiter of your own ambition, passing off a detailed fantasy as legal tender for satisfaction, and in doing so, you bankrupt your own drive. Why would your mind then motivate you to endure the struggle, the rejection, the grueling effort of the actual work when it believes the reward has already been dispensed? It would be like receiving the championship trophy before the season has even begun. The urgency to train, to fight, to earn it, evaporates in the face of that hollow, premature victory. This is the profound weakness I am speaking of, a physiological disarming that occurs right under your nose, leaving you chemically pacified, content to merely rehearse your triumph in the quiet theater of your mind, while the real stage remains dark and empty, waiting for a performance that never begins. What ifs now be absolutely clear and draw a line of demarcation in the sand between the two forces at war within your mind, for this distinction is the very pivot upon which your future success or failure will turn. On one side of this line lies passive certainty, a siren's call that feels like faith, but is in fact its hollow echo. This is the certainty of the finished goal, the intoxicating fantasy of the mansion, the applause, the final product that you can see and feel in your imagination with such clarity that it pacifies your ambition. It is a state of reception where you are the audience to your own future triumph, and it feels good precisely because it demands nothing from you in the present moment other than your willingness to dream. On the other side of that line stands its powerful antithesis, active certainty. This is not the certainty of the goal, but the certainty of the process. It is the unshakable belief in your own capacity to endure the grind, to make the 50 phone calls, to write the single paragraph, to learn the new skill, and to do it all with a resolve that does not require the emotional reward of a daydream to sustain it. Active certainty is enacted, not received. It is the mindset of the builder who is certain, not that the castle will be built, but that he can lay this one brick perfectly right here and right now. One makes you a visionary who lives in a future that may never come, while the other makes you a worker who constructs that future with their own hands, one deliberate action at a time. You require both the vision and the work, but I tell you this without a shred of doubt, the work must always come first. For a vision without work is merely a hallucination, while work guided by vision is how empires are forged. It is one thing to hear this truth spoken aloud in the abstract, and it is another entirely to hold it up to the stark light of your own life and conduct. The time for theory has passed. We now move to the unflinching practice of self-examination. I want you to ask yourself these questions, not with the gentle curiosity of a passerby, but with the brutal honesty of a surgeon assessing his own wound. Do you find that you speak of your dreams, that you narrate the magnificent story of your future success more often than you engage in the silent, private, and often frustrating work of building it? Does the act of thinking about your goal provide you with a sense of calm completion, a soothing feeling that it is already within your grasp, rather than generating a restless electric energy that forces you out of your chair and into immediate action? Do you find yourself consistently planning to begin your real work someday soon, when the conditions are finally perfect, when you feel more confident, when you have more time, perpetually waiting for a starting pistol that will never fire because you are the only one holding it? If you find a whisper of affirmation within you, if you recognize even a shadow of your own behavior in these questions, then you have identified the presence of passive certainty in your own mind. You are perhaps collecting the interest on a principle you have never deposited, living off the emotional rewards of a victory you have not earned. This is not a character indictment, it is a diagnosis. And a diagnosis is the first and most crucial step toward a cure, for it tells you precisely where to direct your focus and your newfound resolve. The bridge from the inert world of fantasy to the dynamic world of achievement is constructed not by a single monumental effort, but through the consistent application of a simple, non-negotiable ritual, a ritual designed to shatter the paralyzing spell of passive certainty at its very source. The mechanism is elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its effectiveness. You must, from this moment forward, impose a new law upon your mind, a law that mandates the immediate physical translation of thought into action. You are hereby forbidden from concluding any daydream, any vision of a future self or a future accomplishment without first answering one critical and grounding question. What is the very first physical, tangible action this vision requires? I am not speaking of a subsequent thought, not a more elaborate plan to be written down for later, and certainly not another layer of daydreaming about how to begin. I am speaking of a single, concrete, executable step that exists in the real world. If your dream is to write a book, the action is not become a writer or even outline the chapters. It is to open a blank document and write a single sentence, however imperfect it may be. If your dream is to build a business, the action is not secure funding or develop a business plan. It is to call one single potential supplier and ask for a quote, or to sketch the logo on a napkin. This ritual acts as a circuit breaker, instantly halting the flow of rewarding fantasy and redirecting that energy into the motor cortex, into the muscles of your hand and your voice, forcing the dream out of your head and into the realm of reality through a deliberate, tangible, and immediate act of creation. It is the ultimate weapon against the neurological betrayal we discussed, for it forces your brain to reassociate the reward of dopamine, not with the finished product, but with the profound satisfaction of initiating the process itself, of being a person who moves. Now that we have established the vital law of the first step, we must also address the nature of the vision itself, for not all forms of seeing are created equal. I want to fundamentally alter how you use the magnificent projector of your own imagination. When you sit to envision your goal, I no longer want you to see the glorious finished building in all its sun-drenched perfection, with the flags waving and the crowds cheering. That image, while intoxicating, is a destination that paralyzes the traveler. Instead, I command you to see the blueprint. See the stark, precise lines of the architectural drawings, the uncompromising measurements and calculations, the exhaustive list of materials required, and the critical path of construction where one task must absolutely be completed before the next can begin. A blueprint is not a fantasy. It is a set of instructions. It is a document of cold, hard facts that demands a builder. It does not ask for admiration. It calls for action. It translates the overwhelming whole into a series of manageable, sequential steps. This is how you must train your mind to work. Your daydreams must cease to be a finished picture and must become a living, breathing blueprint, a source of clear, unambiguous commands for what needs to be done next. When you see the mansion, your job is not to admire it, but to immediately locate the part of the blueprint that says poor foundation, and to understand that your only task in this moment is to find the cement mixer. This shift in perspective transforms your imagination from a playground of distraction into the most powerful project management tool you will ever own, a mental workshop where dreams are not admired but are actively dismantled into their component parts, ready for assembly. I must be perfectly candid with you about what you will feel the moment you close the daydream and open the blueprint. The instant you trade the warm, passive certainty of the finished goal for the cold, active certainty of the first step, you will feel a resistance, a palpable sense of disappointment, almost a grief for the perfect, effortless victory you have just willingly abandoned. You must understand that this feeling, this sharp and uncomfortable friction, is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. It is the exact opposite. It is the undeniable proof that you are on the right one. This is the feeling of strength being born, the grinding of your will against the inertia of a lifetime of habit. It is the boundary wall between the person you have been, the dreamer, the visionary without a workshop, and the person you are destined to become, the builder, the architect of your own reality. You must learn not only to expect this discomfort, but to welcome it, to seek it out as your new compass. If your daydreaming session ends and you feel only peace and satisfaction, you have merely indulged in another session of passive certainty. But if it ends with a knot of anxiety in your stomach, a shot of adrenaline at the thought of the work to be done, a thrilling fear at the prospect of your own inadequacy, then you have succeeded. You have successfully transformed a fantasy into a mandate, and that visceral, uncomfortable reaction is the fuel that will power you through the first action and then the next, building the momentum that eventually makes the dream inevitable. This is the real work, and this feeling is its signature. The philosophy is nothing without practice, and the time for practice is now. I am not giving you a suggestion, I am giving you your first mission, a 24-hour operation to retrain your mind and reclaim your ambition from the seductive grip of passive fantasy. For the next full day, you will live under a new law, a single rule that you must enforce with military discipline. You are permitted to dream, but you are absolutely forbidden from finishing a dream without taking one single physical, tangible step toward its immediate realization. The scale of the step is irrelevant, its existence is everything. It must be an action that leaves a mark on the real world, however faint. If you dream of a new career, the step is not to update your entire resume, it is to write one bullet point for your experience section. If you dream of physical fitness, the step is not to buy a year's gym membership, it is to put on your shoes and walk for 10 minutes. If you dream of a difficult conversation, the step is not to rehearse it perfectly in your mind, it is to open your contacts and type the first letter of that person's name. This action must be taken within minutes of the dream's conception, not later in the day, not tomorrow when you have more time. You are performing a neurological override, teaching your brain a new and powerful association that a vision is not a conclusion to be enjoyed, but a starter's pistol that demands an instantaneous physical response. This is how you forge the chain link between thought and action, and how you build one single step at a time, the unshakable habit of a builder. Your dreams are now on notice. They must pay rent in the currency of action, or they will be evicted from your mind. Let me leave you with this final sobering truth. Your mind, for all its incredible power, was never meant to be a sanctuary for the ghosts of a future that never comes. A museum where you merely admire the portraits of a life you wished you had the courage to build. A dream that does not instantly demand a corresponding action is not a vision. It is merely a decoration for your idleness. A pleasant fiction you tell yourself to make the passing of time more comfortable. It is a beautiful gilded cage of your own making, and the door is unlocked, but it will not open itself. The world out there, the real world of achievement and respect and genuine self-worth, was not built by dreamers. It was built by men and women who dared to dream, yes, but who then picked up their tools, however crude they were at first, and began to build. They understood that the blueprint, however perfect, is worthless without the sweat of the builder. They traded the comfortable certainty of the fantasy for the demanding certainty of the process. So I say to you now, the time for mere seeing is over. The time for building has begun. Your tools are waiting. Your blueprint is clear. And that first, most critical, most important step, the one that separates forever the dreamer from the achiever, is right there in front of you. Do not admire it. Do not think about it. Take it. Key takeaways and action step. Let us now be surgical and precise, for philosophy without application is merely entertainment, and we are here not to be entertained but to be transformed. These are the pillars of understanding you must carry forward. And more importantly, these are the actions you will now take to cement this new law of achievement into the very fabric of your daily life. Your key takeaways. 1. The seduction of passive certainty. You now understand that the warm, comforting feeling of certainty about a future goal is a neurological trick, a dangerous sedative that pays your mind the reward for an achievement you have not yet earned. It is the enemy of action. 2. The power of active certainty. True strength lies not in the certainty of the outcome, but in the certainty of the process. It is the unshakable belief in your own capacity to execute the next step, to lay the next brick, regardless of how you feel about the distant finish line. 3. The blueprint mindset. A vision is only useful if it functions as a blueprint, a set of instructions that demands a builder. You must train your imagination to see the specific tasks, the sequential steps, and the required materials, not just the finished, perfect structure. 4. Embrace the friction. The feeling of resistance and discomfort you experience when moving from a daydream to a tangible action is not a warning sign. It is the confirmation that you are on the right path. It is the feeling of growth, and you must learn to welcome it as your compass. Your action steps. 1. The interrogation. For the next week, become a vigilant guardian of your own thoughts. The moment you catch yourself slipping into a vivid, rewarding daydream, you will interrupt it. You will not bask in its warmth. You will confront it. 2. The mandatory question. Upon interruption, you will immediately ask and answer this mandatory question. What is the first physical action required by this vision? The answer must be a single, tangible, executable step that can be measured in the real world. 3. The immediate execution. You will then perform that action. You will do it within minutes, not later, not after you finish what you're doing. You will do it now. The action is the only acceptable conclusion to the thought. 4. The ritual of building. You will repeat this process, interrupt, question, execute, until it ceases to be a conscious effort and becomes your mind's new default setting for handling ambition. This is how you forge a new identity, not as a dreamer, but as a builder. The theory is now complete. The tools are in your hands. The only thing that remains is your decision to use them. The first step is yours, and yours alone, to take. Begin. Remember, your success begins the moment you decide to act.